T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast 78. And we have a classic in the room today. We've got one of the you've had some of the most appearances on here, and I'm pretty sure.
I guess so.
And I'm pretty sure we've had like a couple episodes now that have been basically just info runners, me, you, and Execute.
Yeah.
But returning once again, the Astro Pub. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. You said, hey, can you come on to a launch sequence? And I'm like, sure. Tuesday, I'm like, what time? And you were like, anytime. What's time's good for you? I'm like, I'll just take all of Tuesday off because I need a day off of work.
It was I was an excuse.
Excuse for getting off work because this is so it works. So
that's it, and it's a great reason to get off work.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on. This is actually getting recorded early compared to when it's going to come out. It's coming out about I think on the 20th or the 21st. We're recording it on the 15th, so we'll probably talk about some things that get a little bit outdated with IAE coming up, but ultimately today we're talking about ships and if Star Citizen still needs more of them, because they're always adding some, and every time there's a new one, somebody has that question. I figure why don't we talk it out and pick the brain of of Lore Stradamus, if you will. So
I am, that is, by the way, that is a fan title. I did not give myself that title, but yes.
But does not turn away from it. It is endorsed.
No, it is endorsed. Just like Nostradamus, who didn't know anything he was talking about, and then everyone assumes that he does. I don't know anything I'm talking about, but everyone assumes I do. So
sometimes the stars align. Like, see what I said?
When Mercury's in retrograde, the RSI will release a new ship.
And they will. In fact, that's, I guess we won't talk about that since that won't have happened by the time this came out. But IAE is coming up, and we know that we've got a few different ships that they've been planning. As with every year, they've got probably a concept ship, a straight-to-flyable ship, and maybe a ground vehicle that they're going to bring out. This is likely 3 more ships being added to the roster of... Do you know how many ships are in the game at this point?
170, I think, plus all the variants.
Is that what? Okay, that's with variants. Are we must be
with
over
variants.
100 unique
Easily.
models at this point, right?
Easily over 100.
It's a lot of ships. And that's not just ships that have been announced. That's in the game. There are a lot of ships, not as many as at least percentage-wise, not as many as I think have been in last year, previous years. But there are a lot of ships that aren't made yet, and one of the questions that comes up often when they're starting to add new ships is like, aren't you going to finish the ones that have already been announced? Do you think that they're doing a good job of kind of tackling those older ships and also introducing new ones?
No. Personally, no. I think CIG often has this problem where, and it's not even the concept ships as much, because concept ships they've really dropped off. For people who, for context, 2 years ago, they were releasing a concept ship a month. Every month they'd come out, and like 2020, I believe it was, where they released a concept ship once a month.
I remember like 2018, 2019-ish. But
yeah,
it was really bad.
I think in 2020 it was like, they released a concept ship a month, but then sometimes that concept ship was actually straight to flyable ship. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't as bad because it was like, oh, it's done. But it's still you hear all the time people going like, great, you've made this this vehicle, the STV, or the we'll hear this when it comes to the Cutter and to the C8. You made this new ship. Where's my insert ship here? The X1, the Banu Merchantman, the Banu Merchantman is getting updates, but
the Endeavor,
the Perseus, the Endeavor. So yeah, I don't think they're doing a good job with that, but I think that has more to do, but they have, I will say, on CIG's defense, they have reduced the number of ships they've been releasing like that. Mm-hmm. It has been much more focused on getting things done. And in another context, I think the reason why they're doing it is A, they need money, but B, the artists and ship designers aren't always going to be working on a ship. So when they finish a ship, they'll be like, hey, let's think of something cool. And so they come up with ideas of ships and then decide to release it because they have the time to do so between other ships. It generates hype. It builds out the universe a little bit more. And the sheer fact of the matter is that CIG needs ships. This game is built on ship sales. And like if that without selling ships, they're not going to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a point of contention for a lot of people, but look at the facts. They didn't make a $500 million on gameplay alone.
Yeah.
So
that is absolutely the case. The ships drive the sales drive the events drive gameplay. It's a circle.
Yeah.
So the kind of next question that comes up, I think then, because you said that it builds out the universe. It sounds like you're kind of talking about the idea that some of these ships are just going to be there for the fact that they're there, not even that they have some amazing new gameplay or some specific advantage over other ships. They just build out the fiction.
Yeah. I think there'll be some ships that are worse. They will release worse versions of ships that exist now. Like an idea off the top of my head is, we talked about this a little bit before the podcast, which was mining needs extensive amounts of ships. I mean, we already have tons of fighters, and we already have a light fighter, but worse in the form of like the Buccaneer or the Mustang Delta. Those aren't really good light fighters in the light fighter meta, and I don't think they'll ever be really good light fighters, but they'll be cheap. So like it'll be like, hey, you can buy this, and also there needs to be NPCs. Like there needs to be things that NPCs would use for various reasons, something to add in flavor. You can think of these as these ships are versions of enemies that you would see in other MMOs or other games where you want to add variety so that they're going to behave and fly a little bit differently. Their weapon loadout's going to be a little different. So, like a Buccaneer might be weak and not meta for the players, but it will almost certainly be very good for the almost certainly be good for an NPC to use as like a basis for how to put this, like a basis for like a sneak ship.
Mm-hmm.
Like you stick a Buccaneer inside of a fleet of Hornets. Everyone's paying attention to the Hornets, and then the Buccaneer comes at you with that size 4, and
it's a sleeper.
yeah. It's the typical kind of like when you're playing an FPS or like a wave shooter or like other games like Dark Souls. It's a mob that you have to pay attention to while you're fighting the more important mobs, because if you don't, it will stab you in the back and kill you.
Right.
And that's gameplay design. But the CIG's concept seems to be, if we're going to make this ship for NPCs, let's just make the ship for everybody.
Yeah. They've kind of everything that they want NPCs to do, they want players to be able to do too. At least most things. And I realize they have shown ships like this. We saw in the visual teaser, I think that was 2019 maybe or 2018. No, it was 2019. They released that Squadron 42 visual teaser, and when they were showing us some of the Vanduul stuff, some of the pirate, the PMC stuff, I can't remember what their name was in Squadron. They showed a couple.
OMC.
Yeah, OMC. They showed a couple of these weird, like very kit bashed looking ships. One of them, I think, was a Mustang, looked like almost completely different, but you could tell from the shape that it was. And I could see them, having
it had
a lot
like
more.
the Cutlass engines ripped off and put on the side of it, kind of thing, or something like that.
And then I believe, now I didn't watch that Squadron 42 video that had leaked earlier this year, which I think is just a longer version of that. But
mostly,
I do think somebody had posted like a screenshot from it or something somewhere, and I saw there was like another ship in that same kind of style. And you can see that they have ships that maybe won't come from a manufacturer, but will be like that sort of offhand model that's, you'd only see out in the frontier or something, which is cool.
Yeah. I believe those ships are called shipjacker ships. I think is what they're supposed to be. And I think they're waiting for Squadron 40 to come out, but I think they will come out in Star Citizen.
Yeah.
And I think those are situations where like kind of like the cruiser, the battle cruiser, and the battleships, which they've talked about from the very early pitch days to today, as something they wanted to add. I think those will be in game. You won't be able to buy them, but they'll definitely be in the hands of the UAE. But we're not going to see them until after Squadron 42 part whatever, when those ships are the showcased ships in that episode, because there's not for players, they're for the narrative's sake, and they need to have an excuse to use them, to build them, which won't be in the verse because no players will ever like see them, similar to like the Bengal. So you have those ships as well. So there'll be just plenty of ships which players won't be able to purchase. But I think 9 times out of 10, CIG wants to err on the side of, if we're already going to make this, why don't we make a little bit of money off of it? Like the Valkyrie is a good example of that. The Valkyrie doesn't really have a lot of use. I mean, technically it does, but it's not really a useful ship for the gameplay we have now, or even in the future. It's a very specific dropship sort of concept.
Very military.
But it's definitely for Squadron. We've even seen it in the trailers of Squadron. It was built for Squadron. It's based off of the Aliens dropship, so obviously it's Squadron. But why not sell it to players? Because players will buy it. And people
and so here comes the devil's advocate segment of the podcast, where I ask all the questions that kind of point away from doing this. But how do you make sure that they don't continue to just have that thought process? We could use a spaceship for NPCs to do this. Oh, wait, players would be able to use that too. Hey, let's allocate dev resources and make another ship sail out of it, and just keep doing that and doing that and it's easy to get carried away with that kind of thing.
I think the answer is you don't, unless you stop buying ships. People won't stop buying ships. I've been to play the wizened old backer card. I have heard people. This is a topic I have heard for 10 years. Well, I guess I've been part of the community for like 8 years now. So for 8 years going, is that at some point they're going to stop. They have to stop selling ships because people will stop buying them because they want X, Y, or Z done, and people still buy them. It just never stops. So
you think
every year is the year that they're going to stop doing it. They're going to not make as money. And then they make freaking record breaking numbers like every year. Well, it just constantly.
I don't want to say too big to fail, but do you think they could do anything to stop those sales? I mean, I guess it would have to be slowly over time, but do you think anything would really tip the scales in that direction?
I think more profitability from other revenue sources. So skins, customization, to be honest, if CIG allowed for player I can see the chat right now, the comment section of what I'm going to say this. Because I think people will scream yes at this one, which is letting players customize their ships in their own way using like some sort of in-game editor or some kind of like, not just paints, but like icons, like images, org logos, whatever, those sorts of things. If you made people pay $2, $5, $10 to customize a ship like that, people would throw their wallets at the screen consistently for that, because people like customization. They want personalization. And if you want to and let's be honest, because the other thing that a lot of people like gamers don't realize, CIG needs money. If they don't get money, they can't keep their 1,000+ person multi
they need a lot of money
studio open. They need the money. So like as much as people like, oh well, they have plenty of money. No, they don't. They really don't. they don't have enough money to keep themselves.
They make a lot of money, but they spend a lot. Yeah.
So they're going to need a revenue source. So it's either, and they're not going to make it off of gameplay sales. So they either got to do ships, skins, microtransactions, cosmetics, something like that. And so it's no one is ever going to be happy with the result. So the answer is, if you don't like ships and you don't like microtransactions and you don't like skins sales, then I mean, you got to choose. You're just in a bad situation. There's no other way that they're going to make money. And I've heard people say subscriptions, but subscriptions won't work either.
Yeah. So that brings up then the other side of the story is, do you think that they could do anything for people to stop buying ships?
Yes, but I don't think they'll like the only way that people would stop buying ships is if they stop updating the game. If they just stop doing updates, if they stop talking to the community, and that's not something CIG will do.
Sounds like a
So.
recipe for forever development, which I guess is
that's what CIG wants to do.
It's
like
basically
it's an MMO. I will just context, because I think a lot of people don't get it. It's like when you say, "Oh, this game's never going to be developed and be finished," and the answer is yes, it's never going to be finished because it's an MMO. Is WoW done? WoW's still getting updates, and it's what 2005 was when it came out.
Yeah,
it's coming up on its 20th anniversary, and it's
same
still
with
getting
things
updates.
like Eve, RuneScape.
Yeah,
I don't know if RuneScape gets updates, but people play it.
I don't know either. Yeah, I mean, the Old Republic still gets updates. The Elder Scrolls Online still gets updates. Good MMOs that survive the test of time will always survive and get updates. And like No Man's Sky isn't even done yet, and it's still being updated. But people say, "Oh, but it's released." So the answer is yes. CIG will release the game at some point, but they're never going to stop making the game.
But there's another, I think, point towards the constant ship releases is that when you talk about updates, generally it's content updates, but CIG still is doing a lot of system updates, and we don't really know when they'll stop doing that. So like there's all these ships, over 100 unique ships, that now are going to have to go through the process of being able to run with resource management, which is a huge, like a huge conveyor belt of work that they're going to have to do as they go through every ship. And like you gotta think, how much are they going to continue to add systems while simultaneously adding ships? Because as long as they do that, they'll always have to go back and redo these ships.
I think the issue is more the systems. Like systems will reach a point where they're not going to add new systems, or if they do add new systems, it won't be as bad. The reason why it's so bad is right now is because the systems for the ships aren't done, but a lot of the basic systems aren't done. But it's on top of that is there's also just not content done for the game overall. So things like PES and server meshing and those sorts of things feed into the ships. They need to have those basic foundations. I think if they came up with some brand new technology that allowed for you to have dynamic hull breaches in the sides of ships for each ships, which is something they want to do, and they do in Squadron, and I'm sure they want to do in Star Citizen, but we don't have any information that's fully going to be coming out. If that happened, it would be a lot easier for them to update the ships, because if that happened post server meshing and the like damage states and such, it would be a easier change than currently, because every time they develop a ship or develop ships, they're developing technology alongside those ships, which is why ships now come out in batches of ungodly numbers compared to back in the day when you'd get maybe one ship every 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, every half a year or something.
Yeah, now they can pump out a ship, like a small ship, in no time at all. And every time they create a new system, that new system is already incorporated into those new ships. And because of that speed, like, yes, they're going to have to update a lot of ships for damage states and stuff like that. But I think all ships are salvageable in 3.18. All ships that are playable are salvageable.
Yeah.
And that wasn't like a huge endeavor that they had to do. They just had to update the damage maps. And then boom, it was done. It was like 6 months, 6 to 12 months. But that was part of the process of salvage, not part of the process of the ship team. So that's that kind of explanation. So
yeah.
I guess that's a long way of saying I don't think it'll matter as much as people think.
Yeah, as
in the long run.
As we get closer to that kind of like, I guess you could say, beta level gameplay, the system updates start to be less and less numerous and not making as big a difference, so they don't take as much time to make, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So going back to the ships being introduced versus the ships being finished, how do you feel about the amount of ships that still need to be done? Do you think that there are any concept ships that are like very obvious that should be going back into the game already that maybe CIG is passing over for whatever reason to do the other ships?
I mean, I'm obligated as a member of the cult of the Endeavor to say the Endeavor, but at the same time,
It would be so useless.
At the same time, it'd be useless. And also, as a cult of the Endeavor, I want that ship to become the last ship that ever comes out for Star Citizen because it'll be the best ship.
Yeah.
So,
what do you think of the? Bless you. What do you think of the Apollo? Because obviously, I mean, that does need drones in a way, but it seems like an obvious choice.
I think the Apollo should have already been in the game.
Bless you.
Sorry about that. I think the Apollo should have already been in the game just because. It's twofold. The reason why it's got problems is the drones and the modularization, because it's a modular ship that you swap out from the tier size 3s or the tier 3s, the tier 2s, and tier 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could do like a stock version where you get a tier 1 and 2 tier 2s and you're done. And you can change it out later when we fix it. But I don't think CIG wants to do those sorts of things. They want to have that available. I think the other major ship that's being overlooked is the X1. Yeah. That's a ship that has no excuse. They have no excuse for not releasing that.
Yeah,
that thing is.
And the G12.
The G12, both of them, because the G12 now they've already redone the physics for the ground vehicles as of 318. They've redone the hover physics as of the hover quad. So they have the new stuff for both of those. Yet neither of those ships are in the pipeline, as far as we can tell. So
yeah.
What's another one that's been pushed around a lot? I can't think of much else because I think they're pretty good on most of the smaller ships. It's just the bigger ships that they have a problem getting out. And they even said it takes them a year to get a bigger ship from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. And we actually know. So I'll say this much: even though this podcast is coming out in a week, it'll still be before RSI Day. So just spoiler alerts for everybody who's listening. This could be something that you don't want to hear. I just skip ahead a couple minutes. But we know that there is something in the works for RSI. We've seen it if you looked at leaks and seen that has kind of that updated style that we've seen from other RSI ships like the Perseus or the, I guess kind of the Polaris as well.
To be fair, at this point, we don't have 100% because Tyler Whitkin did come out and say that someone leaked someone inside leaked some of those images, and those images may have been old.
Yeah.
So may have been concept ships. So what we saw for this RSI ship may not be the actual final version. It could have been a version that they were running with and they changed it. So
yeah. So
caveat.
We know that there is probably something coming from RSI. We don't know the specifics. But the question I think that is on people's minds, considering the size of this prospective ship, the style and all of that, is why work on this as opposed to the Polaris or Perseus? How do you feel about situations like that where a company is putting something out? And I mean, the obvious answer is you get better sales, but would they really not sell as much as of an old concept? There are plenty of new people who have never seen them before. So what do you think is the strategy there?
I think this is going to sound weird, but I think it's a situation of they have artists that they need to have work. They have ship artists that are not doing anything, and they need to constantly do work. So they constantly have more ships because they think, hey, we're always going to need more ships in the game.
But why not just hold on to? I mean, why put out a new concept?
Because why not? They've already worked on. Because we've already established this is a forever development game. Similar to say Warframe, where the developers even said that they will release it live when they say that their game's out of beta, they'll stop working on it. I think that's not exactly what CIG is going to be doing, but it's a similar concept where CIG will work on this until Chris Roberts runs out of money, dies, or the people stop playing the game. Just because this is kind of his dream, it's kind of his idea, it's his ultimate magnum opus, and he's got full control over it. So he wants to do that. So it's one of those things where the honest to God answer is CIG will not stop doing that.
Yeah.
because they've got other things they got to do. They have to. They're going to sell the ship because they have it done. They've started working on it. The honest to God answer, if people are upset about it, is I think this will probably happen with a lot of community content creators, the community in general. Like I've already stopped to saying just don't buy concept ships.
Yeah.
Just don't buy it because there's just no point, because you don't, especially larger concept ships like this RSI ship.
Mhm.
We have no idea when it's going to come out. It could come out in 4 years. So
Yeah. That's why I say, like, why put out a concept ship that, even if the details are that it's being worked on already, and putting that work in front of the older concept ship, that's, I think, one of the main sticking points for a lot of people, is that, you're putting out a ship that might even do the same thing as that older one, but not work on that older one. For instance, I really hope that when they get drone gameplay working, they introduce it with, like, the Vulcan. That seems like the most obvious point, but I also worry and kind of expect for them to just introduce a new concept with drones.
A new drone ship.
Yeah. And use that as their test case. And it's those kinds of decisions that I'm just like,
Yeah. I think it is honestly a problem with CIG that they're getting ship happy with that. I 100% agree. I don't like the idea because I have the Perseus, but I also know that the Perseus isn't going to come out until like 2025, 2026, or even later. The Polaris is the big one that was released in 2018 or 2016. I think it was 2016. CitizenCon. It's
was
now
it
one
really?
of the oldest concepts. Yes, it was. I was
wasn't
there
the
when it
Nautilus?
The Nautilus was 20. The Nautilus was at a special event. Remember, they had a special dinner with Chris Roberts.
Yeah. Oh, I thought that's what you were talking about.
No. The CitizenCon in LA 2016 was when they released the Perseus.
Crap.
The Polaris
I did not. I didn't know the Perseus was that old.
Not the Perseus, the Polaris.
The Polaris. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. That was... I did a video on CitizenCon earlier this year just for supporters, and I was going back through all of it and kind of reviewing all the years, and that was one of the things that I was just like, oof.
It was an oof.
Randomly placed this huge ad in the middle of... Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
CitizenCon is better than it used to be.
2016 was a bad year for Star Citizen, just all around.
Yeah. Leaked into 2017 too.
But like that, for instance, has been out for a long time, and CIG's even admitted that they're like, it's going to take us a year to do it. And I know they're trying to hire new people, but at the same time, they're never ever going to catch up to that backlog. Like that's just not going to ever happen. So
I really would hope they can, at least for small ships.
Yeah, well, small ships, I think they have for small ships, because I really can you think of any small ships that are out there? I mean, other than say ground vehicles. Well, the Vulcan,
when I say small, I mean less than 60
medium
meters.
To large. Yeah, like Aurora to like a Connie size, right? Yeah. I mean, but I think in general, like the Vulcan is trapped behind gameplay. Like, there's just no gameplay for it, so they haven't released it.
That's fair. And the Vulture and Corsair coming in are two really big wins. I think those are like key mid-sized ships people have been wanting for a long time. Yeah,
and I think like that's another example of ships. I think we'll get a large salvage ship, something that's smaller than the Reclaimer, but bigger than the Vulture. Just because there's a slot there for that kind of ship, like a medium or like Connie sized salvage ship. So but that's another concept ship that'll be added that will probably come out sooner than the Polaris.
Yep.
But the Polaris isn't coming out until after Squadron. So there's a bunch of reasons in there, and it's like that meme of Charlie Day doing like the with like the strings and everything in the background. Yeah, that's CIG's organization.
That's their thinking process around this. Yeah,
that's their thinking process. Is just like randomly stringing things. Be like, okay, well, this needs to get done here first, and this is like there's John Crew has a cork board with string tied around with like pictures of ships everywhere about when's going to release when. So
and then just like a little patch of wall that he doesn't pay attention to with all the Drake ships over there.
With all the Drake ships, yes.
I love how to be fair, it's almost like in the lore now that John doesn't like Drake, even though he keeps coming out and he's like, I don't not like Drake. Stop saying it.
hey, he's this is going to be a bad year for John Crew because he's releasing several Drake ships in a row, the Mule, the Vulture, and the Corsair. So, and is about to do a concept ship for another Drake ship.
Proud of him. I'm proud of him. It's good to fight your fears. So let's actually start to move in that direction. We were talking about the small ships and that they get done faster than the big ships. And I think that's a pretty good question to ponder over, because a lot of what Star Citizen is going to really be about is kind of multi-crew, big ship gameplay for a lot of people. But at the same time, small ships are easier to do. There's definitely going to be more people doing things in small ships. Do you think that it's better for them to just keep focusing on the small ships and let the big ship backlog kind of catch up a little bit? Or you think, I mean, you say that the artists are going to keep pumping stuff out. What do you think is the best option?
I think small ships is the best. Just because until we get multi-crew gameplay in, there's not going to be a lot of use for larger ships. And even when multi-crew gameplay comes in, that's such a niche, small group of people. I know a lot of people are like, well, I'd love to do multi-crew gameplay, but look how many people probably, and I'd like to see this in the comments. Please comment down below. Are you a person who only plays solo? Are you waiting for like NPCs to come out if you want to play the larger ships? Do you enjoy your small ships over your big ships? And I can almost guarantee you most people will be like, I'd like to do multi-crew ships. There's a couple people who really want to do multi-crew ships for that full experience, but they want to hang out with a couple of friends or have a couple of NPCs to control. They don't want to have like the Idris or the Javelin. You know, they want a manageable large ship, and manageable large ships are those larger, like the Connie sized, the Spirit, you know, those sorts of things. And I think the fact that they're focusing on the smaller ships may also reflect their time, but also just CIG has a lot of access to information that we don't. And one of the things they really revealed to us about active player counts and also new player accounts corresponds that CIG sees a huge increase of newer players, newer backers. Again, a lot of the people watching this video may have been a backer over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Like just picked up the game.
The majority of my org is almost the majority of my org now, over 50%, is in like the last 3 years joined.
Yeah. I mean, you yourself, we joked that you joined like what, 2018, 2019?
I started making content.
I'm a new backer.
Then.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh, you're new. It's like, no, now you're an old grizzled. Welcome to the old veteran club.
Got the Star Citizen wrinkles.
Yeah. So, and I think that's reflective of that, is that they've seen this information and they're like, let's make more ships that's more accessible to the smaller or like solo person.
Right.
Because I'm sure they can also tell based off of stats of how many missions have been shared, how often players are in close proximity to one another for large periods of time, which will tell them how often people are playing together.
Yeah.
So, and you can also see that with things like the Perseus. What is the Perseus crew? Like 5? And almost all the ships they've been making that are even that around that size, the Hammerhead, large upper end of that size, upper end of large ships, have all been like less than 10, usually about 3 to 5, 3 to 6. And I think CIG's dialing in this is the optimal size of a Star Citizen group right now. So we need to make ships for that optimal size, 1 to 6 people. And I think that's a good idea, because that pushes for more people to have accessibility to it. And I'm a big guy about accessibility. I want more people to be able to have access to ships in game. You know, I'm one of those people who's like, if it's out for backers, make it be purchasable in game, and this like drop it to the next patch kind of thing, because I think that reduces accessibility to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good direction. I think that's the reason why they're doing this. And I prefer the small ships over the large ships. And honestly, I don't really care about the large ships, because as the info runners always say, the longer the ship is in production, the better it's going to be when it comes out. Right. And since there's really no reason for having large ships right now, buying a large ship that you think is cool and you going, hey, this may come out before the heat death of the universe, but when it comes out, it's going to be cool. So that's the kind of the trade-off you have to make as well with those larger ships, is that you may not get them soon, but when they come out, they're going to be really good. So.
Yeah. So obviously then, with that thinking, the most popular ships would be the starters. And one of the complaints that people have with starter ships is like they are starters. Everybody goes through them. Why are they not polished? Why are they not constantly brought up to gold standard? And I agree with that. I sympathize with that. And it kind of goes back to that same argument of, hey, are they going to keep releasing starter ships and other small ships and not bring the ones that have been here that most people have up to date? How do you feel about like new starter ships coming in without the old ones just being polished?
Well, I'd argue that a lot of people don't pay attention to the Mustang, and the Mustang has got a glow up that people don't pay attention to. It has its cargo bay now. People don't forgot about that.
I discovered that a couple weeks ago. I was like, wait a second, you can put boxes in it, close it up, fly them places. It's pretty cool. So
access your inventory for it, like it's the ship's inventory. So it's great. And so they have been updating them. I think the issue is more, there are some small glitches and issues with, say, like the Aurora, with getting in and out of the seat and those sorts of things. Which is, yes, they need to fix those things. But I'd also argue the Freelancer is the same problem, and that's probably like an advanced starter. The Connie is definitely a problem with that, because the Connie is the interior is so out of date. All of those ships, the answer is, should they increase them? Should they bring them to the standards? Yes, but also I would expect them to bring it up to standards after they have a good new player experience, because there is no new player experience.
Yeah.
It's garbage. You wake up and Star Citizen just like slaps you in the face and says, "Welcome to the universe, good luck," and then walks away, and you're just stuck there.
Then you fall through
trying
a building.
to figure out what you do. Well, yeah, if you're lucky, you fall through the building. If you're unlucky, you spend 7 hours trying to figure out how to get to the spaceport because you don't know how to use the tram.
Stuck in the building, yeah.
Yeah. So there's just no at all new player experience. So I'd argue that there's no point in updating the starter ships until they have an experience that can even get people to those ships in the first place in a reasonable manner.
That's
and
fair.
Time frame that doesn't require them to pull up like a tutorial video.
Yeah, that is fair. But you mentioned the Freelancer, which I think has a really big issue on its hands, in that it has cargo space that's locked behind a doorway that 1SCU boxes can't get through. And it's those kinds of like little design decisions that come up when they start to make systemic changes, when you're like, holy crap, what if something happens where like a lot of ships have to go through that? And if you're introducing ships of that size on top of that process of, I guess people would call it tech debt, that could be an issue. The Freelancer, though, I think is a unique case with that. I don't know how many ships have that problem, but that one is going to be an interesting one to solve.
Issues with tech debt? I mean, yeah, that's the problem with everything.
Specifically the doorway with the cargo refactor.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think the issue with like a lot of those ships, because it's also the problem with the Connie too, with well, not too much, the Connie Taurus a little bit, because there's that cargo in the back where you only
have to carry it back there.
I think it's just boxes, like small hand boxes, I think is what you'd be in there. The Freelancer just needs an interior rework, and just from top to bottom. The exterior is fine, but it needs an interior rework, because that's not even mentioning things like the four bunks on in the Freelancer, and the 4 seats. Like why does a 2-person ship have four beds and 4 seats?
Just because sleepovers.
Yeah. So it was built for a different time. So the concept, like that whole thing is busted. Yeah, it just busted. So.
Do you feel like since they introduced the Freelancer, or maybe Freelancer's really old, let's say since they've introduced ships from like 2018, 2017, do you feel like the amount of change that ships are undergoing has slowed down since then? So like, to put this into a better example, a ship that came out in 2015 would need more work to get up to our standard now than a ship that comes out in 2020 would need to get up to, say, 2025. You know what I mean?
So you're asking,
are they still changing the ships as much as they used to? Like, to update all the ships that are coming out now, do you think it's going to take as much work? Or do you think they're future-proofing, I guess, is what I'm asking.
I think they're future-proofing to a degree. it's hard for me to say, because part of me wants to say that yes, they're future proofing, but I also think that the older a ship is, the harder it is for them to bring it up to the modern standard. I think that it'll be quicker for them to bring it up to modern standard because of a lot of the different things they're adding, but at the same time, like a freelance, like a constellation. Let's just take a constellation for example. The classic iconic ship of Star Citizen, probably one of the main icons of Star Citizen next to the Hornet, and they're going to have to redo the interior with things like inventory management in mind, things like survival stuff in mind, as well as things like
Life
escape
support.
pods, life support. Yeah, the different hole like separations for doing bulkheads and those sorts of things. Locking doors, which they don't have in those yet.
Yeah.
So you need to add like wall panels and stuff like that. So there's a huge amount of things they're going to have to add to those that I'm sitting here going, I don't know. I think that's just going to be, they're going to take a look at it and go, okay, here's all our new stuff, and this is what the Connie is, and they're going to go. It's kind of like taking a Sherman tank from World War II and saying, let's update this Sherman tank to modern standards.
Basically, just making a new tank.
It's like, this has got to be a new tank. We can't just take this and turn it into a modern tank. It would never work. I think that's the problem that CIG is facing with these, taking a Model T and say, let's add all modern like things while trying to keep its original frame. It just won't work.
Yeah.
You just can't add, we can't add like heated seats and air conditioning into a Model T and expect it to work exactly the same as a ship, as a vehicle from 2022.
Right.
It just won't work.
Yeah.
So I think that's the same problem you're looking at with the Connie and with other ships like that. So the bringing it to modern standards will have that problem. But I think the newer the ship is that needs a rework, the easier it'll be, because it was built with the concept of what Star Citizen is becoming in mind.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I want to say yes, but at the same time, I think what I'm actually saying is no. I don't think I think it's going to be harder for them to bring it up to standard, which is why they're not touching it.
Yeah,
it's just like.
But you are saying that these ships that they're making now will be easier to bring up to standard because
yes,
they knew, like and you could tell with the last few years as you can see they're getting door panels. There are very clear spots for component bays. There are clear gun racks on single seater ships and like those kinds of things that kind of show that they understand better what a ship needs to be long term.
The Cutlass is a great example. The Cutlass has gone through probably the most updated ship in Star Citizen. It has panels for doors. It has a button that you can do to open up its back ramp and everything like that, which it never used to have before. So that was added pretty simply because CIG continues to release new Cutlasses. They released Cutlass Black, and then they had to redo the Cutlass Black, and then they did the blue and the red. I think it was the red. They did them at the same time, the blue and the red.
Yeah.
And they did the steel. So like the Cutlass has constantly got an update. Hello. There we go. Finishing.
his camera, for anybody who's listening, the camera went out.
Yes. The camera went all wonky,
rainbow
like
puke.
I was like in a sci-fi cyberpunk movie from the 90s.
Sci-fi spaghetti.
Yeah. So but that's an example. Like the Cutlass is constantly being updated. I can almost guarantee you that Cutlass at one point was their standard, was their go-to experimental ship. Another example of this is the Gladius. The Gladius has been out forever, and it still has things that only the Gladius has. It even had the first component bays for a fighter. You can go around and open up the bays and all the kind of stuff. So this is in Squadron. So I think the newer the ship is, the more they've been planning for it. So they future-proofed it going forward. I do not think CIG is at the stage where they're going to throw everything away and restart from scratch like they've done twice already. Well, maybe only once, but in terms of I guess twice, in terms of the concept of the game. So ships aren't going to start suddenly need a completely different pass. They're finally getting to the details of how these ships will work. And because of that, it'll be easier, I think. Yes. Yeah,
I think that's an interesting kind of additional caveat on top of the fact that they're letting some of these older ships sit by, because then then the next question is, every year that goes by, it's harder and harder for them to even consider updating those ships. Should they keep incrementally updating them, or leave them because they're such big, gigantic ships? I mean, by the time they have to make the Endeavor, how much different is it going to look because of how much they're going to have to go in, like you said, and update that Sherman tank to modern standards?
Yeah, I don't know how to say that.
So the other thing that brings up a lot of ships, and that we know is going to require a lot of new ships, is the fact that each profession has specialized ships. What are some obvious holes that you've seen in the game that you already know are going to have new ships coming in?
Salvage. We're going to need like a ship that's smaller than the Reclaimer, but bigger than the Vulture. So also maybe even a starter salvage, like even a smaller version. Medical is another good one. So
yeah, we have a possible medical ship coming up, a variant that we've seen in the trailer for IAE. Looked like a Pisces medical variant. What do you think of that? He's giving
good.
A thumbs up, everybody.
Good. Yes, it's good. It is good.
Yeah.
It's something. I mean, I've been a big advocate for an Argo version. I think they even talked about an Argo version in the past, in the lore of having an Argo rescue version. So the
little putt
swap out. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense if you're doing a search and rescue, especially during combat. You're not going to, or just after a combat situation, you don't necessarily want to send out a big ship like an Apollo or even a Cutlass Red to go find somebody. If you're already in the area and someone's around there, like someone is ejected, then having a just a little putt to just go out there and pick somebody up and bring them back is a lot more efficient. So
yeah.
But yeah, I think we're to see even more dynamic versions. Like for instance, we have the Apollo, but why don't we have something that's like a medium ship that has a very, very good like tier 1 bed? Like a spawn ship that's the size of a Cutlass. I don't know, made by Origin or something like that. That's we've talked about this in the Infernos, like the idea of a ship that's done for plastic surgery. Like a high end
cosmetics on the
specific, go. Yeah, like it's plastic surgery, but also for things like respawn and other things, like a surgery ship, rather than a clinic that is the Apollo. Like a surgery room that's just a ship.
Yeah.
So those sorts of concepts are the big additions for that. We also have bounty hunting. We have like 2 bounty hunting ships. We have the Avenger Stalker, and we have or 3. The Avenger Stalker, the Hawk, and the Cutlass Blue. But we don't have any large bounty hunting ships, and Bounty Hunting 2.0 is coming out soon. Then we also have, what else? We have, we don't have a, medium. We only have like 1 medium bounty hunting ship, which is just a variant of the Cutlass.
Yeah. What do you think would define a bounty hunting ship? Just a restraint system of some sort?
A restraint system, and some sort of way of disabling or turning off quantum or disabling ships.
Okay.
You've got a EMP or distortion weapon based or the quantum interdiction devices, stuff like that. Like a large ship, something that's bigger than the Cutlass Blue, which is effectively a Mantis, but also has like full Mantis plus also restraint system.
How are you gonna feel when they introduce a new ship with bounty hunting V2 update, and instead of like giving the Anvil Hawk the functionality?
I mean, it's gonna happen. It's just gonna happen.
I'm just looking at the Anvil Hawk, and I'm like, oh, finally, that really specific seat that they've got in there is gonna be useful. And then I can just see them releasing a different ship for it.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. That would be another thing to add into a bounty hunting ship, is like a tier 3 medical bed. Because if you're gonna get into a fight, you want to have either A, fix yourself up, or B, fix your target up, because if they're dead, they're not worth as much because of regen. So that's that sort of thing. I can also rattle off a couple of more ideas which they still have, because there's a lot of like specific concepts they haven't done. They have, how about a Banu merchantman? They have a Banu merchantman and they have the privateer, but they don't have a medium. They don't have a large or medium or small version of like a commodity ship,
Right, like a
trading
kiosk
ship.
or something that you're flying around.
Yeah, you know, I've joked about the Cutlass Purple, like the actual Cutlass Purple,
Yeah.
a Cutlass, which is just a flying storefront. You know, open up the sides, and you know, a little ramp drops down, and you can have people come in and out of your ship.
Got a
and
little
buy
sign
stuff.
that pops up.
Yeah, little sign drops down. We're open.
Yeah.
Little neon sign. There's also ships about, let's just say, we said salvage,
Well,
mining.
we know there's plenty of parts of mining that are, well, okay, maybe not plenty, but we know there are other parts of mining that are going to be in the game, right?
Yeah, I mean, nebula miner. We've talked about that in the Inforunners as well. The idea of having to mine gas giants, but also nebula clouds for fuel. Like we have the Starfarer, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And think about refueling. We have two refueling ships. We've got the Starfarer and the Vulcan, but there's nothing else. There's no dedicated medium refueling ship that's like kind of like a smaller version of the Starfarer. There's no medium refueler ship because the Starfarer is a large ship. So, like, where or even, you know, a capital class. I guess we kind of have a capital class refueler. Well, that's even a large ship, the Crucible. Repair ships. We only have two repair ships. We don't have a large repair ship. We don't have the capital class repair ships. We don't have the medium repair ships. We kind of do. It's hard to place the because it's probably gotten increased in terms of its size with the Crucible, but I'd imagine it'd be more of a large ship. And while the Vulture is kind of a medium ship, it's also a multi-purpose ship.
Yeah.
So having a medium dedicated repair ship makes sense. A medium dedicated refueling ship makes sense. So there's just pretty much, we have a lot of ships, but people, I think most people realize, will note that about 70% of all the ships that CIG has released are combat ships.
Yep.
Just pure combat in some way, shape, or form. But even then, bombers. We have a handful of bombers that actually exist in the verse. We have a handful of medium combat ships. There's like the Vanguard. There's just not many ships like the Vanguard that exist. I guess kind of the trash can, the Redeemer, but there's
so much hate.
Like, the Redeemer's, is the Redeemer the only gunship that exists? There's no smaller version of the gunship, no larger version of the gunship. It's a
monopoly.
Like
they take on all the gunship jobs.
We only have two drop ships. You're telling me there's no other company that makes drop ships other than Anvil and Drake?
Yeah.
You know, there's no RSI drop ship. I mean, I guess we had the Legionnaire, but you know, something like that. So there's pretty much, CIG has a lot of ships, but when 40% of their ships are fighters and the other 30% are smaller, like maybe the only version or one of maybe two or three versions of a specific type of combat role, and the last, what, 20% of my math is probably all wrong. So tell me I got it wrong in the comments. I don't even remember. No, I know, but the remainder of it is all just the rest of the enterprise ships. Any ship that has to do with non-combat. There's tons of roles they could still fill out.
Yeah. So there's a lot of options for them to have the ships, and I think we've also kind of come to the conclusion that they're not going to stop. Partially because A, people will always buy them, and B, because they just seem to really enjoy making ships. Do you think that we will start to see a better focus on general purpose ships, and they'll slow down on combat ships? Or Squadron 42 was always kind of dominating their narrative. Will they continue to build out combat ships?
I think it depends on what's available. I think as more gameplay loops become available, so things like salvage and mining and refining, like that's another example. Refinery ships, we have one.
Yeah.
You know, Those sorts of once those gameplay loops start coming in, we'll see more of those ships. Mining is a great example. Since mining has come in, we only have the Prospector and was it the Orion when it first came out?
The Mole?
The RSI, the big RSI ship.
Oh yeah, the Orion.
The Orion, is it the Orion?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we only had the Orion and the Prospector when mining first was introduced.
Oh yeah.
But then a couple of months later, we got the Mole. A couple months after that, we got the Rock. Like we start to see this progression of mining ships. We probably have more mining ships in game now, or in game, or like either in game or in concept now, than we have almost any other profession.
Oh yeah.
Excluding just cargo hauling.
Yeah.
Cargo hauling. And I think we'll have even more coming out. We already know we're going to have more because there's a RSI, big RSI, the large RSI miner, which is already being worked on in concept.
Yeah.
So
they're
good.
They've got a lot of ships that they can do, but like, is it too many? I mean, that's really the question that I keep coming back to: do they need to do more, at least in the near term future?
Yes. For hundreds of different reasons.
Okay.
Because they have ship artists who are doing nothing. They're gonna want them to do work because they're hired. They're not gonna fire them.
Yeah.
Because they don't know when they need to have them. So having them there and having them work, it gives them something to do, B, a paycheck, and C, loyalty. So because that's one thing that people forget about when it comes to these sorts of things is that all of these people that CIG is working with, after a year or two of working with them, they have enough experience to work in pretty much any other place they want to. And while CIG pays pretty well and has pretty good benefits, there are plenty of places which will pay those people better and give them better benefits or a promotion that CIG can't give them.
Sure.
So having those people on payroll is very, very important for them, because even if they don't need them right away, think of it as like, I don't know, a lot of people who play Star Citizen are in IT. Think of it as like IT, where 90% of the time you don't need an IT department, but that 10% of the time you need them right away.
Yes,
because everything's on fire.
Not have one. Yeah.
Yeah. So to an average suit, that's like, oh well, this is a waste of money. But to somebody who actually experiences, understands IT, it's like, this isn't a waste of money because you want these people here. Yes, they're not doing anything now, but you do things in the future. So what do artists do when they're bored? They draw. So why not just give them ships to draw? Like, have them make ships. Go for it.
Do you think they'll outrun the reputation hit that gives them, though, as the kind of just constantly putting out pictures and like chasing this goal?
As long as they keep making the game, as long as they keep adding things like PEZ and salvage and cargo refactor and server meshing and like all of these future, repair, refueling, they add a ton. They're adding these gameplay loops. As long as they add the gameplay loops, I think they'll outrun that reputation, because people don't care about ships unless they can play them in game. Like, there'll be people who are really obsessed about them, but I would say nowadays there's fewer people who say, well, they're just making ships, not making the game, who actually pay attention to the game than there are. Like, that's a meme outside of for people who never play Star Citizen or don't even know Star Citizen outside of just like the clickbait stuff. That's what they'll say. But us who've been following the game, even this year alone, has added so much new content. People forget the refueling was added this year. Like, fully, was it this year? Or was it
this year.
It was this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So refueling was added this year. We're getting salvage before the end of the year. We're getting, new cargo refactor before the end of the year. These factors are huge. These are brand new gameplay loops that didn't exist before. And we've never had 2 gameplay loops added in a single year, period.
Ever. Yeah. This is a huge acceleration.
So so we're seeing a lot of stuff being made. It's painful for us who are like microscope this close to the to the development, but if you step back, even in terms of like looking at year to year,
you don't even notice.
Been doing much. Yeah, you don't even notice just how much is advancing.
Yeah,
and as a result, I think they will always outrun that hit, because people don't care as much, as long as because that's the real thing, is that people care about the game being in, not ships. The complaint about ships is, why are you making the ships but
when
not
the game? Yeah.
But as long as they're making the game, no one cares.
Yep. So, last question. Do you think that they'll get better at delivering ships? Do you think we'll start to see more ships per quarter? Like actually coming into the game, not being announced?
Yes. We already are. What is the probability? We've got the most likely the cutter. Well, no, by now they'll already know the cutter is already in the game.
Yep.
So you have the cutter straight to flyable, possibly the C8R straight to flyable. The Vulture is out. Will be out in 318, and the Corsair is out. And then we also know that the whole C is finished. We had this STV already, straight to release. We have the PTV and the UTV, which will come out soon for ground vehicles. Gosh, I'm trying to think of the other ones. We know they're working on the
SRV.
SRV,
Yep.
which is big. That's already being worked on. We know that the Crucible is being worked on. We are reaching a point where I pretty much expect 2 to 3 ships released per quarter starting next year. And I think that will increase even faster.
I'll hold you to that.
As their team gets bigger, as those things think. So like maybe not first quarter next year, though. Again, it depends on when patches drop.
Yeah.
But I think by Invictus going forward, I think we'll see at least 2 to 3 ships, ground vehicles or ships coming in, just because they have the time or they just have the desire to do so. And so we've already seen this acceleration. I think that acceleration will continue to the point where people will forget that a ship is being released. Like someone will be like, "Oh, right, that ship's coming out this patch."
Yeah. Well,
I forgot about it because all these other ships are coming out this patch.
It'd be nice to be at that point, and hopefully the gameplay matches that, and we don't have ships outpacing what's actually going on in the game. But I'm gonna hold you to that. I'm gonna look for that. We're gonna meet again next year, and we'll see if they are meeting the goal yet of ship releases. But anyways,
I look forward to that with my Lorstradamus prediction.
Yes, probably Invictus week. We'll probably have a good talk about that. But thanks, Paul, for coming on. Always a blast to have a chat with you about ships, about lore, about Star Citizen in general. We got to have another talk about like Starfield sometime soon. That's next time they have another update.
Like January. Oh, no. Yeah, probably January.
Maybe the Video Game Awards. I don't know. I haven't really been looking, but maybe we'll see.
The other thing I want to say is we've been watching the chat on your side of things. I apologize if my voice is a little cracked or is some cracked. I don't know what it is. So if there's some audio issues, it's my fault. It's not Keenan's fault.
Yes, we do have. I'm not sure exactly where it's coming from. It's like it could be OBS or Discord or microphones or headphones. So it's always something. But that's just the process of running these kinds of shows internationally. Something happens.
Yeah.
But anyways. Thanks so much. And there he is, right on cue. So why don't you tell everybody where they can find your content, since he's calling to end this
the podcast. You can follow me at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub, youtube.com/TheAstroPub live, or youtube.com/TheAstroHistorian. The Astro Historian is where I do my lore content. The AstroPub lives, we will find things like the office hours and Captain's Table. You'll find Keenan and Inforunners and tons of different content creators that exist in the Star Citizen first to come talk about Star Citizen. And I also stream live to Twitch and to YouTube my gameplay stuff as well on that as well. So if you enjoy that, I'm live Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays usually. And I try to produce at least 2 videos a week for both channels. So you like lore or you like Star Citizen, you want long form content similar to this, go check it out.
Yeah, definitely check it out. It's good stuff. It's some of my favorite Star Citizen videos on YouTube. I actually was watching your show. I even came onto your show long before I started my own, and that was a huge inspiration. I loved being on there, and I like the idea of bringing people together to talk. So thank you for doing that for the community. He's been doing it a long time. A lot of great content. If you enjoy this podcast or my stuff, definitely go check it out. But
you should also be following and subscribing here on YouTube.
Smashing all the buttons.
Watching, hit that button. And we want to hear your comments down below for your thoughts on, are there too many ships? Would you like them to cut down on ships? To keep the conversation going in the comments, because we read them. We may not read all of them, but we do read them. So
the king of
we don't
podcast closes over here.
Yes.
But yes, please share the podcast. If you're on an audio platform, please give it a review and leave a like maybe. But thank you so much for coming and listening. Paul, thanks for being my guest. I got throat problems now.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, geez. And
give me an excuse not to go to work. So.
I'm happy to help. But I will see you all next week.